Okay, it's time. No more threats at kids. Giving your child threats, warnings, and promises of consequences does not work in the long term. It's a shortcut that actually cuts off your child's desire to listen to you in the first place. So today on the Just 7 Steps blog, I cover why there should be no more threats at kids. Hi, I'm Robert Schramm, a behavior analyst, education specialist, author, and dad. And I'm also the developer of the 7 Steps to Instructional Motivation. Each week, I provide you with helpful information based on the Just 7 Steps approach. So if you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, take a second, do it right now. You'll be glad that you did. Parenting can be a very hard job and one that is unique to every single family. No two kids are exactly the same, and the same is true for parents. We all have different sets of past experiences that are coloring the way we interact with others, and the combination of those experiences with strong emotional ties to one's own children can make a parenting relationship go off the rails very quickly, particularly if you have a child who would be considered strong-willed. It might seem like a quick and easy solution to throw out a threat every now and then. And even if the first time you threaten your kids with a consequence, they do listen, you need to realize it's not going to be a long-term solution. So today, we discuss the reasons there should be no more threats at kids and what you can do and should do instead. Have you ever seen a child on the floor in the grocery store, unwilling to get up and go with their parents who haven't bought them an item that they wanted? It's not an uncommon occurrence. In fact, I've seen some form of this play out many times in my life. It's always the same. The child is upset. The mom doesn't want to give in, but she wants to go. And she starts to threaten to leave the child there if they don't get up right away. Then the child continues to resist the parent. And so the parent begins to say things like, okay, that's it. I'm leaving. I'll leave you here all by yourself. Come on, you better get up now. I'm really going. They may even walk around a corner to try to convince the child that they might be leaving. But the bottom line is, if the child doesn't decide to succumb to this threat that the parent is ultimately not going to follow through on, they will come back and will either pick up the child and leave with them together, or maybe even give in to some degree and give the child what they wanted all along. So why might we do this? Why do parents use threats with their children? And how can I convince you there should be no more threats at kids? Well, threats are promises of negative consequences. They are similar to warnings in that they're not actual consequences themselves, but instead verbal promises of consequences to come. And when we threaten a consequence, it's because we'd rather not have to follow through with that consequence. The reason parents get in the habit of threatening consequences is because they don't want to have to use the consequence, and they hope the threat will stop the behavior that they're not wanting to see anymore, or will at least motivate the child to use a behavior of interest, something they'd like to see. Now, the first time parents do this, it is likely that it works. And because it works, it acts as a reinforcer to the parent, making them more likely to use threats again in the future. However, this outcome is not one that can continue long-term. As children begin to understand that the reason for the threat is the parent's desire not to use the consequence, in knowing you don't actually want to follow through, it eventually leads to them not responding to the threat to see if you are actually willing. And in some cases, the parent does begrudgingly follow through, and in other cases, they choose to warn or threaten again and again, and sometimes again, all in an attempt to get the behavior they want without ever having to follow through with the actual consequence. For many years now, I've instructed parents to avoid giving warnings as part of their parenting plans. The reason is, if you're willing to give a child 3 warnings before you follow through with a consequence, it won't be long before your child learns to ignore you 2 to 3 times before listening or giving in. If you're willing to give them 5 warnings before following through, they will learn they could ignore you as many as 5 times without any real consequences. And with every warning you give that doesn't get responded to correctly, you as a parent become slightly more frustrated and angry, and your ability to make rash decisions and follow through with fair consequences begins to dwindle. So rather than giving your child threats or warnings of possible consequences, I urge you to live by the rule. Say it one time as an instruction, and then after that, follow through with a consequence that you believe will be meaningful, but that you will not find aversive to use. If I threaten to spank my child, I better be willing to spank them. If I threaten to ground my child for a month, I better be willing to do that as well. And because I know that there's little to no meaningful benefit in spankings and long-term punishments, and there's lots of potential negative outcomes related to them, I would never want to threaten these sort of things. Even reasonable, meaningful consequences like losing access to an item or a privilege for the time being should not be threatened. Because again, threats are opportunities for your child to make bad choices and not see any real consequence. Only encouraging them to make that choice again in the future if the choice leads them to any additional reinforcements on its own. So my rule is, if I say it as an instruction, using expectation language such as I want, I need, or it's time to do something, there will be some form of consequence based on the child's reaction. There will be no reminders or warnings or threats. The one instruction should be all the child needs. If I give that instruction the right way, at the right time, and under the right motivation, and I'm ultimately in control of the child's most motivating things, which is taught in the Just 7 Steps approach, there's a really good chance the child will decide to quickly listen to me the first time. And if they don't, it will not benefit either of us if I don't follow through with some kind of meaningful consequence. The only way a child will know that instructions are important signposts, that positive reinforcement is becoming available, is if I can consistently be there reinforcing positive responses to my instructions. And the only way they will know that ignoring or refusing my important instructions is a bad idea is if I'm willing to follow that with meaningful consequences as well. The real secret here is to identify the types of consequences that are available to you and that you are willing to follow through with. Ones that you know are fair and should have the desired effect. In my teaching, we recommend negative reduction techniques. That is, the refusal to give or the removal of reinforcement after a behavior that we don't want to continue to see. It might mean taking away their phone for a little while, or the toy, or turning off the TV, or sending them out of the room where the activity is taking place as an immediate consequence. However, I also teach that these consequences should be mini consequences, in that they're small in nature and the child should be able to undo them easily with better behavior choices, the ones that will deserve these positive outcomes. So if you've already identified the types of consequences that you're willing to use and that you're comfortable with, you won't hesitate to use them whenever they're needed. And the same is true with positive consequences when they do listen and make good choices. By knowing upfront the types of consequences that you're okay working with, you won't feel the need to avoid using them by threatening them or warning the child, which, as we stated earlier, starts off a chain reaction of events that leads only to frustration and less cooperation in the future. If you feel like you want to know more about this sort of approach to parenting, I recommend that you check out my free workshop called How to Get Your Kids to Listen Without Raising Your Voice or Nagging. And it's available right now at my website, just7steps.com/workshop. It's less than an hour long, and it's a great source of information for parents, especially ones who are trying to get the most out of their relationships with their kids. And again, it's absolutely free. So come to just7steps.com/workshop for your opportunity to learn more about the Just 7 Steps approach today. And remember, nothing good comes from threats or warnings. Promises of consequences are not consequences, so they don't carry the same outcomes. Giving a warning to your child begets having to give more warnings and threats, and only leads to frustration and distrust. It's always better to just say what you mean and mean what you say when you're working with your child. And following the Just 7 Steps approach makes it easy to understand and follow all of the important parenting principles that will make your child want to engage with you in important activities that you think are important for them. And they will be more likely to do it the first time you ask and with positive attitude. So get over to the website now for the free workshop at just7steps.com/workshop and start yourself on your family's path to progress. If you like this video blog, I would love it if you would leave me a comment, give me the old thumbs up, share the video with others who might benefit, and please subscribe to the channel for more parenting videos from a behavior analyst and parent with over 20 years experience helping families to overcome some of the most challenging behavior that any child might use. I'd love to see you right here next week. So make sure you subscribe and remember, no more threats at kids.